Hello everyone, my name is Eunice, and today's presentation is about my selection from Time 100 Most Influential People in 2021. So begin, we can you guys can guess the application of my selection. Yes, my selection is architect. And many of you introduce the players in the Olympics, but I introduce the person who designed the center of the Olympics. And his name is Kengo Kuma. This is the outline of today's presentation. It is divided into 4 parts. First, I will briefly introduce Kengo Kuma. And the second is the main discussion. There are 4 important points. And the third part is conclusion. And the last is the Q&A time. Let's move on to the brief intro. Kuma is a famous Japanese contemporary architect, writer, and professor. Second, he is famous for his losing architecture. Third, he is the only architect selected as one of the 100 most influential people in 2021. Fourth, Kengo Kuma associate is his practice. Many pictures I used are from the Instagram of his practice, and I type the name of his buildings on the right bottom of the pictures. And fifth, he is deeply inspired by Japanese traditional culture. These traits can be easily observed in the following presentation. Okay, so let us move on. And in the rest of the time, I will illustrate why Kuma is deserved to this honor from 3 dimensions. The details of losing architecture and his innovations, and his reflection from pandemic. So let's move on to the losing architect parts. First, the philosophy. He emphasized close connection to nature and sustainability. So many of his buildings are near the village and countries. The words losing in losing architecture means disappear. Specifically, Kuma thinks buildings shouldn't overtop the environment, but fuse into it. Take this children's literature museum as examples. His buildings has a sense of harmony with the surroundings, and this museum is built to commemorate the author of this cartoon. Let's look at this slide together. Kuma says things are slowly changing from architecture as a monument to architecture as environment from the 20th century to the 21st century. So what's the difference between these 2 centuries? 20th century is in industrial era. So in 21st century, we have faced many environmental crises such as global warming. And because of the new technology, we forget that we couldn't survive without nature. As an architect, Kuma wants to create a new style of architecture to deal with these consequences and make preventions. And third part is the materials. Kuma regards concrete buildings as pressure on the earth, just as the philosophy I mentioned earlier. He loves natural materials. His wisdoms on choosing materials embodies sustainability. Take a Hiroshige Museum, for examples. The green parts of the upper picture means forest and village. Kuma used the wood from the green parts to build the museum in a red place. This is recovers the eco-friendly cycles, just as the picture. People build buildings by woods and live there and develop agriculture. This cycles retains the power of lands. We love to use various natural materials to build buildings, like use wood to build the center of the Olympics. Use grass to build the roof of Market Yushara, a famous hotel in Japan. And he used stones in the hot spring to decorate the hot spring in. And the stone is bending. It's a nature stone. Because Kuma is classified into the innovator in time 100, so I will introduce his innovations of losing architectures. First aspect is joint system. What is joint system? Joint system is a traditional architectural unit in Japan, and the thin wood can be fastened without any screws. Kuma used this small unit to build a big museum. It called GC Protocol Museum. Additionally, he also created invention in innovative joint system. Thin wood will be fastened with special angles, and this invention is used to build Starbucks in Taizai. The second aspect is Japanese tradition. Tea house is a traditional buildings in Japan. In ancient Japan, tea house was a private place, so the doors cannot be open. However, Kuma thinks it's a pity if people in the tea house in Vancouver cannot enjoy the magnificent scenery. So the features of the tea house in Vancouver is the doors can be opened. And the third aspect is technological materials. He not only likes natural materials, but he also used sustainable technological materials like carbon fabric to design the houses. So let's move on to the reflection on pandemic. Kuma says modern buildings are like closed boxes. Because of the quarantine, we have reached our limit to live comfortably in boxes. We have discovered that we need to have contact with the nature. And COVID-19 has forced us to rethink the functions and roles of offices and houses. Therefore, Kuma said he would, after the pandemic, he would like to build houses that people can easily walk outside to take relax or enjoy the sceneries. And this is the museum he built in Turkey. I think this museum shows the concept. I think why Kuma is deserved to be honored as Time 100 in 2021. The reason can be classified into 4 points. First, he has outstanding architectural designs. And second, he devoted himself to cultural innovations and heritage. Third, use architecture to fulfill social responsibility and sustainability. And fourth, he endeavored to create proper way to face crisis and unstable future. I think today's presentation can be concluded into 3 sentences. First, Tango Kuma champions the idol of losing architecture. Second, He is famous for his ability to merge architecture with natural and social responsibility. Third, he is deserved to be honored because he is actively creating well-being to the public. And this is my presentation. Thanks for your listening, and feel free to ask the questions.
Right. So thank you, Eunice. Yeah, I think again, so we have a presentation which is well supported by so much information. I mean, even though you're not a fan or you're not an expert on architecture, but I think you can still be maybe impressed by the architecture philosophy of this architect. Again, so now we would like to invite any questions or comments. Yes, Sean?
Uh, those building was built for a good purpose and also very beautiful. But do you think they will have a problem that they are not so comfortable to live or are flashy? Because do you know a museum in New York called Guggenheim Museum, which is very beautiful building, but it's not practical to use. Do you think his building will have the same problem like that?
I think his building will not have the same problem like that because his spirit is people have to walk to the nature. So I think in the future maybe he will build the buildings for people that can live comfortably.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think it's a good question. Yeah, I think functionality is another important concern for most of the architects. I think I have a question for Eunice too. I think actually his architectural philosophy reminds me of a famous American architect, Frank Lloyd Webb. Because I think Frank Lloyd Webb also emphasizes the harmonious relations between humans and nature. So I wonder if this architect, if Mr. Kenji Kuma, did he mention any important architects that has influenced him a lot?
He said a Japanese architect called Kenzo influenced him a lot. Yes.
Oh, okay. So he was influenced by Kenzo, another famous Japanese architect. Okay, I see. Good. Also, I wonder, has he ever received any important architecture awards?
Yes, I think all all the buildings I displayed today is awarded, but I remember I forgot the award names.
I see. Oh, okay. Good. So, can we also have other questions or comments? Especially anyone who hasn't spoken yet. Feel free. You can also make some comments if you want to. Or do you have any questions or comments from maybe Ansley?
I can I ask another person later because I'm the next presenter and I all of my brain are think about my presentation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can understand that. Right. Yeah, so no worries. Yeah, I think we can maybe, yeah, we can get back to you later. All right. So, how about Kevin? Any questions or comments?
I think she did a very good job. I just because I'm not very familiar with architecture, so I just listen. I don't have some special comment yet.
Right. Thank you, and also thank you for your appreciation. I mean, it's okay. You don't have to know architecture to ask questions. Anything you're interested in, you can maybe also ask Eunice to elaborate or to explain. Okay, maybe just one question. I think because I think you spent a few minutes discussing the so-called losing architecture. I think maybe here the word losing is a translation from Japanese.
I think the translation, yes, it's from Japanese, and in Chinese we call it 附件主.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, yeah, I think it's why. Okay, so it's not about adding something to nature, right? It's about maybe deducting something from man-made architecture. I see. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, now you mentioned the Chinese translation. All right, good. So, any other questions or comments for Eunice?
I have one question for Eunice.
Yes.
The architects love to create the house with lots of natural materials. And do you think it can be used in Wunshan district?
I don't know. So there are many woods in Wenshan district, or I'm not familiar with Wenshan district, but I know that we cannot use the natural materials like the tea leaves to build the buildings. So I think maybe in Wenshan district we cannot do that.
I think my question is I want the answers focus about because some natural materials is they require low humidity, and but in Winston district is I think it is not easy to for a architect to build a house like that. So do you think it is capable?
So you said I think maybe in Wenshan district we have to rely on concrete and steels because of the natural environment. But I think Kuma's philosophy is he wants to reduce the percentage of concrete buildings. But it's the fact that in 21st century there's no possibility to have zero concrete buildings in the world.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. Yeah, I think it's a good question. Yeah, I think this question once again has to do with the environment. Yeah, we know in Taiwan we have earthquakes, we have typhoons. Yeah, so I think actually the government required that most of the buildings, especially residential buildings, have to be resistant to earthquakes. So that's why we tend to use concrete more because concrete buildings are more resistant to earthquakes. This can be another reason why we see more concrete buildings in Taiwan. All right, good. So thank you, Eunice. So I think it's another good presentation. So now I think we're going to move on to our next presenter. So now I would like to hand the floor over to Ansley